Lu Sheng, eager to check out the subsequent techniques, quickly scanned them over. After what seemed like an eternity, he yawned, but not because it was boring, but rather because it was so in-depth. It required a lot of psychic energy to keep up. However, he finally finished reading the 3 techniques. Each brought its own surprises. Notably, the stellar body technique had its name changed to the immortal stellar technique. This is where things get more interesting, and perhaps the real inheritance of this amazing technique. He learned a lot from reading it over and over again. Simply put, the crucial aspect from the 6th level to the 7th level is the consolidation of martial will, merging blood energy and psychic power together, and then channeling it back to strengthen the martial artist's own body. The progression from the 7th level to the 8th is almost the same thing, but delves deeper, requiring not only a stronger martial will, but also breaking the physical limitations known to humans and transforming blood energy, coagulating it into an essence, and imbuing every inch of flesh with one's own martial will. Zhuang Kui, the guy who got blasted to dust by our boy, upon advancing to the 8th level, could create weapons with his own martial will. People at this level would be able to infuse their attacks with a trace of power from the universe. This is the major distinction between the 7th level and the 8th level. However, Zhuang Kui, clearly missing this crucial aspect, uses a secret technique to force himself to advance to the 8th level, causing him to have a weak foundation, resulting in him being far from a true 8th level great grandmaster. With this realization, perhaps Lu Sheng himself wasn't far off from the 8th level too. With that thought, he continued to read the contents of the immortal stellar technique. Pondering the final few sentences, after several minutes, an idea suddenly struck him. He wondered to himself, could it be the concept of immortal cells? Perhaps the creator of this technique had a theory about immortal cells, using powerful blood energy to rejuvenate the body from the cellular level, aiming to achieve an everlasting, truly stellar-like existence to reach immortality. Pursuing the truly formidable physique and strength of a star. Seems like he was onto something. He then thought to himself, a high-level great grandmaster possesses not only a powerful martial will, but also a superior body. Lu Sheng, having cultivated body refinement techniques, especially the immortal golden body technique, was perhaps the reason why he was stronger than other grandmasters right now, or even potentially surpassing great grandmaster Jiang. However, what made him hesitate a bit was that in the immortal stellar technique, the first task for the practitioner is to shatter the core. Apparently, after shattering the core, one then can use the immense blood energy combined with the martial will to cultivate and nurture a cell. And this very cell would become the immortal cell. Gradually, one has the potential to transform all cells in the body into immortal cells. Perhaps by then, his punch could truly shatter a star. Although this is merely theoretical, and no one had ever achieved this, not even the creator of this technique. But you know who did? A baldy who likes to play video games and do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 10-kilometer runs daily. Anyway, at the thought of this, maybe once he reaches the 8th level, even a martial saint might not withstand his punch. Lu Sheng could hardly fathom the philosophy behind the creation of this technique. Coupled with the aid of other techniques he has, perhaps he could indeed make this theory into a reality, achieving immortality in every cell, existing as long as the heavens and the earth, holding the stars in his hand. His breathing was rapid. Maybe even the creator of this technique never truly believed it could be achieved, as it undoubtedly belongs only in myth. But there's a problem, Lu Sheng couldn't help but lament. But how many resources would it take to achieve that point? Clearly, whatever is left on this planet is surely not enough. Perhaps swallowing a whole planet might not even suffice. However, this wasn't enough to make him lose faith. End of the day, this is an incredible technique. As long as he can create the first immortal cell, no great grandmaster could stand up to him, and with 2 or 3 cells, perhaps he could challenge a martial saint. Just thinking about this made him excited. He decided to try out this theory in the dream realm, where fortunately, any mishaps here wouldn't have much impact on him in real life. He then sat down to meditate, allowing the core within him to spin and slowly float out, with the powerful force of blood energy emanating from it. This very core is the source of all his strength. A twinge of reluctance flashed through Lu Sheng's mind. Did he really have to shatter it? However, this hesitation lasted only a second. He became more resolute as he took one last look at it, and then he forcefully shattered it. With a fierce shout, his face twisted in pain, The intense pain caused him to growl continuously. In an instant, the immense blood energy contained in the core burst forth like a river breaching its dam, surging outwards. Enduring the pain, Lu Sheng used his psychic power to gather all of the released blood energy. Even for him, this was too much. He couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood, but he didn't stop there. With all he had, his psychic energy materialized behind him. With both hands, he slowly recollected the dispersed blood energy, then concentrated it all towards his forehead. Gradually, it condensed and compressed, finally forming the first immortal cell. Time seemed to stop in the quiet dream realm, and a golden light appeared on his forehead. Slowly, he raised one of his hands, made it into a fist, and struck downwards. As his fist came in contact with the floor, golden lightning crackled around it. The punch struck the ground, causing the entire building to tremble violently. Massive cracks appeared slowly around the building. However, in the blink of an eye, all nearby buildings and structures within hundreds of meters collapsed thunderously, leaving a massive hollow crater. He exhaled slowly, and looking at the devastating aftermath, he began to marvel at the power of just one single immortal cell. Turned out, the punch he threw tapped only into a fraction of the immortal cell's power. He had yet to master its full strength, yet this punch exceeded all others he had delivered before. No specific techniques were necessary. It was as if all his techniques, blood energy, and internal power all condensed into that one strike. After contemplating for a moment, Lu Sheng thought of a name that would be most fitting. He named it the Heaven's Grasp. Suddenly, his eyelids felt heavy, and the next second, his vision darkened, and he collapsed from weakness. Merging just one cell had drained all his strength. He lay on the concrete ground, reflecting that he needed more resources. Gazing into the distance, he knew it was time to head to the Eastern Military District. While on the front line, filled with powerful exotic beasts, posing deadly threats, but also brimming with invaluable resources that he desperately needs. By now, Lu Sheng had a deep understanding of the Great Grand Master level, but he knew nothing about the Martial Saint. He wondered, if he had 10 immortal cells, could he defeat a Martial Saint right now? If 10 wasn't enough, what about 100, or even 1,000? It was hard to imagine just how strong he could become. He was eager, but he knew these things had to be done step by step. He took a deep breath and returned to the real world. He got up and checked the time. To his surprise, 12 hours had passed. He quickly used his psychic power and sensed his surroundings. His father was playing chess with a neighbor, his sister was exercising, and his mother was cooking. It seemed that the people from Ji Dao had stuck to their words. Looking out the window, he knew that the Martial Saint naturally wouldn't continue such disgraceful acts just because of two useless trash. However, that woman probably wouldn't just sit by and do nothing. He needed to make sure to eliminate any potential threat to his family before heading to the Eastern Military District. He then put on some clothes, grabbed a few steamed buns downstairs, and told his mother that he would be heading out. Meanwhile, on the TV, an interview with Ling Su was playing. Eating his buns, Lu Sheng smiled. It had been a long time since he last saw Ling Su, and he had matters to discuss with her. In case you forgot who she is Lu Sheng's future waifu number 2. In the bustling heart of Water Lake City stood the largest pharmacy. As Lu Sheng stepped through the entrance, a young, possibly recently graduated female employee quickly approached him. Her prepared greeting halted as she was about to ask what he needed. However, before she could speak, Lu Sheng smiled and asked her if she knew where Ling Su was. The girl stuttered, unable to finish her sentence, her cheeks turning slightly red as she gazed at the handsome man before her, blinking rapidly and somewhat slow to respond. She quickly realized that was the boss's name. She pointed towards the laboratory, even offering to guide him there. However, Lu Sheng smiled and thanked her before heading towards the laboratory by himself. The girl watched his figure until he disappeared, still dazed and unable to snap out of it. Another coworker approached, chuckling, and tapped her shoulder, teasingly asking if she had been mesmerized. The girl shyly shook her head, but couldn't contain her curiosity about the striking visitor. She was told that Lu Sheng was supposedly a distant cousin of their boss. She followed up by saying, not only is he extremely handsome, but he's also a martial arts prodigy and the national top scholar, even having won first place at the martial arts tournament few days ago. Hearing this, the girl's eyes widened. She glanced back at the laboratory door, wondering when will be the next time they meet again. Meanwhile, Inside the lab, Ling Su, clad in a lab coat and gloves, was meticulously conducting an experiment. She held a test tube filled with a vibrant green liquid. Upon seeing Lu Sheng, she informed him that she had prepared everything. She then picked up another lab coat and helped him into it. Lu Sheng praised her work. Ling Su was a bit hesitant, but finally mentioned her family was causing trouble again and asked when he could help her. Lu Sheng, donning gloves and a mask, nodded at Ling Su, assuring her that he would help her as soon as he finished everything he needed to do and told her not to worry. Watching Lu Sheng's back, Ling Su felt that he had grown much stronger again. She marveled at how much he had changed in just a year they had known each other, from a first-level martial artist to what he had become now. Was it really possible for someone to undergo such immense changes in such a short period as Lu Sheng? Choosing not to disturb Lu Sheng further, Ling Su stepped out of the lab and closed the door. With a sweep of his psychic energy across the laboratory, he immediately began the complex process of concocting. As he was about to create the newest supplement, he used his psychic power to separate the ingredients, which floated in mid-air. Each step was executed with pinpoint accuracy and perfection. Soon, the first vial of the supplement was produced and poured swiftly into test tubes. Lu Sheng looked at the finished product with satisfaction, took a small sip first, and then drank the remaining supplements in one gulp. As waves of searing heat spread through his body, it only lasted for a few seconds before Lu Sheng quickly realized that the core he had shattered had grown back. Seemed like the supplement had worked just as he expected. Despite everything going according to plan, however, he wasn't overly joyful. Gazing at the heaps of medicinal residue beside him, the cost was immense. A vial of the supplement had burned through approximately 300 million. The idea of transforming all his cells into immortal cells is likely to be financially daunting. Considering that Ling Su and his pharmacy earned a mere $1 billion or so, obviously, it wasn't enough. Suddenly, a thought struck him. He had heard people always talk about how the front lines were flush with uncountable wealth, where money could be easily scooped up as long as you were strong enough. Whether this was true, he wasn't sure. Lu Sheng stripped off his lab coat and disposed of the mask and gloves. Walking out of the lab, he thought it was time to head to the Eastern Military District. After bidding farewell to Ling Su, he made his way to White Lake Airport. He decided to call General Yu first, but the general didn't answer. Waiting in the airport, he didn't see either Chin or Snowy, who was supposed to pick him up. Could something happen in the front line? He wondered to himself. Meanwhile, he leaned back in his seat, tilting his head to gaze at the sky outside the window. Surrounded by joyous laughter, and what can only be described as peace, however, this tranquility was brought by the sacrifice of soldiers fighting in the front lines, and soon he will be a part of them. Perhaps it was an honorable feeling. Recalling the information he had accessed in the dream realm, he knew that deep in the eastern front line were numerous untapped valuable mineral mines, currently occupied by beasts. If he managed to clear the surroundings, then it would allow him to freely take whatever was in these mines. If he wanted to amass a fortune quickly, perhaps mining would be the fastest way. As a passenger plane touched down, a fighter jet landed soon after. The fighter jet caught the eye of two girls, preparing to board their plane. Curious, one of the girls glanced at the fighter jet while her friend urged her to hurry up. In her haste, one of them accidentally bumped into Lu Sheng. Surprised, they asked if he was taking the same plane as theirs. With a friendly smile, Lu Sheng replied that his plane was different. Since they were at the same gate, and there was only one plane, they assumed he was simply joking. One of them pointed at the fighter jet and teasingly asked if he was planning to board that instead, prompting laughter from the other girl. Just then, another fighter jet landed. The pilot opened the cockpit door and waved at the window, drawing the curious stares of the two girls, both wondering if the pilot was waving at them. However, they soon realized the person they were talking to was now walking towards the fighter jet, and it dawned on them that the fighter jet really was there to pick him up. A middle-aged man approached Lu Sheng and extended his hand, introducing himself as Qin Huaihu, under the command of General Yu in the Eastern Military District. Noticing the man's senior colonel rank, Lu Sheng, intrigued by the shared last name as Qin and the fact that both were part of the Eastern Military District, he then asked if the man was related to Qin. With a smile, the man confirmed that Qin was his nephew. Lu Sheng, looking around, noticed neither Qin nor Snowy were here, who were supposed to be picking him up. When he asked what happened, the senior colonel's expression grew serious. He explained that recent discoveries of new cavern rifts had tightened the frontline situation. Even General Yu himself had joined the frontline battle, and the fighter jets, including the one that had come for Lu Sheng, were part of a reinforcement effort, and several more were heading towards the front line. Lu Sheng nodded, started walking towards the jet, meanwhile asked how long it would take to reach the front line. The senior colonel was somewhat surprised. Lu Sheng didn't seem to be scared. Lu Sheng, smiling, tells him that he had been waiting this day for a while now, and quite eager to head to the front line. The senior colonel, watching this young man walking past him. Perhaps this is how a prodigy grandmaster is supposed to look like. Thinking about this, he murmured to himself, 7th level grandmaster. This was something the senior colonel himself had dreamt of reaching. Yet despite fighting on battlefields for decades, and now at 57 years old, he was still only at the peak of 6th level. He wondered if he still had the chance to ever achieve the realm of a grandmaster in his lifetime. He let out a deep sigh as he looked at his hands. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng turned back and asked the senior colonel to brief him on the current situation at the front line. Turned out, the Eastern Front had always been more tense compared to other fronts, though there had been some easing over the past 2 years. However, recent frequent occurrences of cavern rifts, and this time, the newest cavern rift, potentially classified as A-level, had exacerbated the situation. The outlook for the battles was not promising, and might even push back the entire Eastern Front. Lu Sheng was surprised to learn that caverns were categorized by levels. The senior colonel explained that the grading of caverns was determined by the size of the rifts, the scale of the beasts inhabiting them, and their overall strength. An A-level cavern housed beasts starting at the 5th level at the least, with more formidable creatures lurking deeper within. The strongest caverns known to humanity were rated at triple S level, with only 9 such caverns being found throughout the world. Fortunately, none of these were in their nation. The senior colonel somberly noted that even an 8th-level great grandmaster could face death entering an A-level cavern, which genuinely surprised Lu Sheng. If an A-level was this dangerous, the risk associated with AA, AAA, and even S-level caverns could be insurmountable, possibly fatal even for a 9th-level martial saint. What then could be said of a triple S level? As for what could be found in a triple S-level cavern, the senior colonel could not provide an answer, but he did respond to Lu Sheng's earlier query. Theoretically, no great grandmaster or martial saint had reached the deepest parts of a cavern. However, as long as one did not venture too deep, even a 5th or 6th level martial artist could survive in an A-level cavern. This all made sense now. The best analogy he could think of was comparing the caverns to game dungeons. The deeper one ventures, the stronger the beasts encountered. Staying near the entrance minimized danger, and in many cases, it might not even be necessary to enter the caverns at all. One could simply guard the entrance. This defensive strategy was now employed worldwide since it was most effective and could minimize casualties. Taking a deep breath, Lu Sheng felt he was getting closer to the truth. Clenching his fists, he pondered whether once he reached the deepest parts of a triple S-level cavern, could he then unveil the truth behind the beast invasions?